Hello traders, welcome to the Nexoel Trading Hub YouTube channel. So we are going to be looking at the weekly Forex forecast for the coming week. If you're new to the channel and wish to be staying updated with our weekly Forex forecast, you can do well to subscribe to the YouTube channel and also join the free Telegram community where you can have access to chart analysis. If you're also interested in the daily market forecast breakdown videos, then you can do well to join the Gold membership to have access to the daily markets forecast breakdown. Let's head to the charts to look at the forecast for the coming week. So guys, this is actually the dollar index and this is the weekly time frame. If you guys can vividly remember, last week we actually identified the sell side liquidity, anticipating to see that price is actually going to run through this sell side liquidity. And in extension, you can remember we are looking forward to the rate of the sell side liquidity. Now we can see that last week that price actually gave us a bearish move to the downside, and we can see the sweep of the sell side liquidity. In a lower time frame, I told us to anticipate the bullish push of price to the upside into the 50% of this candle week, and then we can frame the bearish push of price to the downside to actually read the sell side liquidity. While we drop to the lower time frame, we're going to identify those zones. So for the coming week, I'm still expecting to see further bearish move in the dollar index. I'm anticipating to see that price is actually going to run through the sell side liquidity and further in extension, major external sell side liquidity. So for the coming week, I'll be looking forward to see that price would actually give us a pullback into the 50% of this candle week or the 25%, and then we actually see the fall of price to the downside. So when we actually go to the lower time frame, we're going to actually identify the zones above this week that we're actually expecting to see a pullback to before we have the continuation to the downside. So let's check the daily time frame. So what we can see in the daily time frame is that we've been having a kind of a range in markets. The market has been reacting within this daily inversion fair value gap and also this daily inversion fair value gap. But there we can see last week we had this break below the daily inversion fair value gap and then price for the return. And then now you can see we had a down close candle on Thursday and then we had this up close candle on Friday. But we can see that price is still below this daily inversion fair value gap. So for the coming week, I'm expecting to see a pullback of price into this candle week in the daily time frame. So I'll be looking forward to the 50% of this candle week, and then we can see price fall to the downside. Or we may see that price may actually just pull back into the order block. We could see price may sweep this high before falling to the downside. We're more concerned with the 50% of this candle week since I'm actually expecting more bearish move to the downside. I want to see price read the sell side liquidity. So let's actually look at the 4-hour time frame. So here in the 4-hour time frame, what we can actually identify is can see that price gave us this rejection block. Last week we anticipated to see the return of price to fill up this liquidity void, and then we see price mitigate the breakout block because this is the last down close candle that sponsored the bullish move that took out this swing high point. So now we expected to see that price will pull back before we have the fall of price to sweep the sell side liquidity. But then what we can see is on Monday, we had a continuation of price to the downside. And then we had the pullback on Wednesday into the breakout block. And you can see that price actually mitigated the low of the inversion fair value gap we actually identify in the 4-hour time frame, where we actually expected to see that price return to, and then we actually frame our bearish move of price to the downside. So now we can see that price mitigated our inversion fair value gap. And now we can see we are having a downtrend. So we have this liquidity void, price mitigated it with this week, and we have the fall of price. So I'm expecting to see that price could return to the upside, and then we have the continuation to the downside. So I want to see price return into this rejection block, the 50% of this rejection block, and then we have the continuation. So I want to see price take out this liquidity resting here, this buy side liquidity. So this is the projection for the coming week in the dollar index. We may have price break through the trend line a little before we have the fall of price to the downside. So this is what I'm anticipating to see in the dollar index. Let's check the 1 hour time frame. So this is the 1 hour time frame. So you can see we have this buy side liquidity resting here. We have the liquidity void, price filled up the liquidity void, and then we had the fall of price to the downside. What we can see in confluence to the liquidity void, we have this fair value gap. So we have, this is our order block. So I'll be expecting to see price pulls back to this price zone, and then we can begin to frame the bearish move of price to the downside, except otherwise where price may actually want to raid last week high point into the mean threshold of the inversion fair value gap before we have the continuation to the downside. So this is all I have to show us, guys, to anticipate in the dollar index. So let's check out the EURUSD pair. So guys, this is our EURUSD pair. If you can remember, last 2 weeks, we actually identified this weekly fair value gap. We anticipated to see the drop of price to the fair value gap, and then we have the projection to the upside. We want to see price take out this buy side liquidity, and in extension, this buy side liquidity. So we can see the clean mitigation of the fair value gap, and we can see the upward movement to the upside. Price is actually taking out this buy side liquidity. So I'm looking forward to see price takes out this buy side liquidity for the coming week. So let's actually go to the daily time frame. So here in the daily time frame, what we can see is we actually identified this order block last 2 weeks, and then we identified the weekly fair value gap for us to actually take our buy entry from this zone. And then we're looking forward to see price continuous upward movement to take out this buy side liquidity. And in extension, we're looking at this buy side liquidity resting here. So what we can see is half price last week returned into this breaker block. If you can remember, last week we had this candle on Friday. So I said we should expect to see price push to the downside into this fair value gap, and then we have the continuation to the upside. What we saw is price gave us the bullish continuation. So if you took your entry in last 2 weeks from this zone, then you actually maintained your position till this very particular price level where we saw price took out this buy side liquidity. So now what we can see is that now price returned into this breaker, because this is the last buy candle that sponsored the bearish movement that took out the swing low. Now we can see price return into the breaker, mitigated the breaker, and then we are having a continuation to the upside. So what I'm expecting to see next week is to see that price would further drop to mitigate this candle week, because you can see that this candle week took out this sell side liquidity, took out this candle low, and also this candle's low, mitigated the high of the daily fair value gap, and then we had this rejection to the upside. So we could see that price may further push to just take out the buy side liquidity, and then we see the return to the downside. So I'm expecting to have a bullish continuation when price return into this breaker block zone, which in confluence we have this candle week. So I'm looking forward to the 50% of this candle week, which I believe should also be in confluence to approximately the 50% of the breaker zone. So I'm expecting to see price fall into the breaker block zone to the 50% of this candle week. And then we see further push of price to the upside, because our target is to see that price will take out this particular buy side liquidity resting here. So let's actually check out the 4-hour time frame. So here in the 4-hour time frame, what we can see is price is facing rejection at this particular order block here. So we can see price return, mitigated the order block, price fell to the downside. Price return, now we can see the choppiness of price delivery within this order block zone. So now within the breaker block zone, we identify in the daily time frame, we can see we have this order block. We can see that price took out this sell side liquidity, and we had this push to the upside. So we have this buy side liquidity here, and we are also having this buy side liquidity. So I'm expecting to see that price returns into the order block, and then we have the push of price to the upside. So this is my anticipation for the coming week. we could see price further continue to the downside, and then we see price project to the upside. Or we could see that price may push to take out the buy side liquidity, and then price returns to the order block, and then we have the continuation to the upside. So let's check out the 1 hour time frame. So here in the 1 hour time frame, we can see that this is the 4 hour order block zone. We can see how price is actually rejecting at the 4 hour order block zone. So we can see how price is rejecting at the 4 hour order block zone. So we have this sell side liquidity resting here. We have this sell side liquidity. So I'm expecting to see price fall into the 4 hour order block, and in confluence, we have this order block and inversion fair value gap also in the 1 hour time frame. I want to see the fall of price to this price level, and then we see the push to the upside. We can see that this particular candle took out this sell side liquidity. So this is my anticipation and expectation in the EURUSD, except price decides to actually reach through this candle low into the daily fair value gap before we have the push of price to the upside. So let's check out the GBPUSD pair. So guys, this is GBPUSD, and this is the weekly time frame. So last week we anticipated for the bullish push of price to the upside. We wanted to see the rate of this buy side liquidity. We anticipated to see that price would drop to the 50% or 25% of the candle week. But just the way we also witnessed in the EURUSD, price just gave us a continuation to the upside. But you can remember last 2 weeks, we identified the order flow. We wanted to see price deep into the order flow, and then we have the bullish push of price to the upside. And you can remember this is the target we're looking forward to, price below this fair value gap. So that is our zone we're looking forward to see price return to. So let's check the daily time frame. So here in the daily time frame, if you can remember, we actually marked out this order block that was violated. We anticipated to see it reclaim price and then push price further to the upside. And you can see that price return into it, and then we have the push to the upside. So we have now last week the continuation. So if you actually took your entry in last 2 weeks from this particular zone, then you actually maintained your position. So what we can see last week is we identified this breaker, and then we saw how it reclaimed price to the upside. So we expected to see a kind of consolidation here. So we can see how price actually gave us this consolidation here before the continuation to the upside. So we can see now we have this breaker. In confluence of the breaker block zone, we are having this order block in the daily time frame. So I'm expecting to see that price would actually fall to the downside into this breaker in confluence to this order block. You can see we have also this breaker block, because this is the last buy candle that sponsored the sell move that's called this sell side liquidity. This sponsored the bullish move that took out this buy side liquidity, that took out this high points before we had the fall of price. So I'm expecting to see this offers a support to price. I'm expecting to see price deep lower before we see the continuation to the upside. So let's check the 4-hour time frame. So here in the 4-hour time frame, you can see that within the breaker zone we identify in the daily time frame, we can see we're having this order block here. And you can see we have this order flow. Price have not really mitigated this order flow, though we have the push of price return, and then push further to the upside. So I'm anticipating to see price falls to the downside into this order block before framing the bullish move to the upside. Or we could see price dip lower more into this order flow to sweep this low as a sell side liquidity before we have further continuation of price to the upside. So this is actually the zone I'm expecting to see price further push to as we anticipate the bullish continuation. So I'm expecting to see that price will dip lower into the order block, and we have continuation to the upside. So guys, this is USDCHF, and this is the weekly time frame. If you guys can vividly remember, last week I told us to anticipate price to return into the weekly fair value gap before we frame our bearish move to the downside. We're looking forward to see price take out this buy side liquidity. But we can see that the market actually maintained the ranging condition within this swing low and this swing high. Don't forget, we are still anticipating to see further bearish move because the overall directional bias in the USDCHF is actually bearish. So I'm anticipating to see further continuation of price to the downside. After price mitigates the weekly fair value gap, I'm anticipating to see more push of price to raid the sell side liquidity. I have this external sell side liquidity in extension that I'm anticipating to see price raid. So let's check the daily time frame. So here in the daily time frame, we can see that within the weekly fair value gap, we have the daily fair value gap. So I'm anticipating to see the drawn liquidity. I want to see price take out this buy side liquidity into this weekly fair value gap in confluence with the daily, and then we frame the bearish move of price to the downside. So let's check out the 4-hour time frame. So here in the 4-hour time frame, what we can see in the 4-hour time frame, in confluence to the weekly fair value gap and the daily fair value gap, we have the 4-hour fair value gap. And we can see this is actually our institutional order flow here. This is our institutional order flow. This is the buying move before the sell move to the downside that took out this low point. So meaning we have this as a breaker block zone here. So I'm anticipating to see that price would actually return to the upside into this price fair value gap. We could see price mitigate the breaker block, and then we have price frame the bearish move to the downside. So this is what I'm looking forward to see in the USDCHF. So guys, this is gold and this is the weekly time frame. So last 2 weeks, we anticipated to see that price is actually going to run through this buy side liquidity. We still anticipated for the bullish move last week, and we can see that price gave us that bullish move. So for the coming week, I'm anticipating to see the possibility that price may dip into this fair value gap we can identify in the weekly time frame. But we could see that price may return to the 50% of this candle week, and then we have the continuation to the upside. So let's check the daily time frame. So here in the daily time frame, what we can see is this is that strong resistance zone that price finally broke through. You can see the impulsive bullish candle to the upside that took out all buy side liquidity resting here, and we can see that price gave us that pullback. So this was Friday's candle. So on Monday, we anticipated to see the possibility that price would dip further when the market opens into this fair value gap before we have the continuation to the upside. What we can see is that price dipped to the downside, and then we see that price projected to the upside. So I'm anticipating to see the possibility that price may give us a bearish move when the market opens to the downside into this weekly fair value gap to take out this sell side liquidity before we have the continuation to the upside. Or we could see price may just react at this order block, and then we have continuation of price to the upside. So we may see price take out the sell side liquidity, mitigate the weekly fair value gap, or price may react at the order block and we have continuation to the upside. So let's check the 4-hour time frame. So what we can see in the 4-hour time frame, so this was the candle we saw on Friday. So you can see we identified this fair value gap in the 4-hour time frame where we expected to see price would dip before we have the continuation. You can see on Sunday we had this 2 bullish candles, and then on Monday we had the fall of price to the downside, and on Wednesday we had the bullish ride. So we can see that price did not really dip into the fair value gap. So we could see that price may fall to the downside. So this is the zone I'm actually looking out. So we could see price face reaction at this order block, and we see rejection. But I'm basically looking at price actually taking out this sell side liquidity. I'm looking at the possibility of price taking out this sell side liquidity before we have the bullish continuation to actually mitigate this weekly fair value gap. So this is all I have to show you guys in the gold pair. So let's actually check out the USDJPY pair. So this is our USDJPY pair. If you guys can remember, last week we actually identified this sell side liquidity as equal lows, where we anticipated to see that when the market opens for the coming week, we are going to see that price is going to actually take out this sell side liquidity. So we expected to see that price may strip the sell side liquidity and give us a sharp movement to the upside to face mitigation at the order block, and then we have a down close week. But what we can see, we have an up close week, but still the directional bias is actually bearish, because I'm looking now forward to see that price will take out this sell side liquidity, because we can see that now price is reacting at this order block. So I'm expecting to see further push of price to the downside. So let's actually see what price is actually going to reveal when price is reacting at the order block when the market opens. So we're actually looking at the rejection zone here to see the price reaction, and then we frame the bearish move of price to the downside. So we're looking at the 50% of the order block or the high of this rejection zone, and then we frame our bearish move to the downside. So let's check out the daily time frame. So you can see this is the daily time frame. So we can see that price took out this sell side liquidity, and we can see that the market is actually giving us bearish movement to the downside. So we have this daily fair value gap, and we have this daily order block. We can see that this order block took out this liquidity resting here, and you can see that the order block is in confluence to the rejection zone we marked out in the weekly time frame. So I'm expecting to see further push of price to the upside into the zone, and then we frame our bearish move to the downside. So let's check out the 4-hour time frame if we can identify any further zones. So last week we saw this liquidity pool, this trend line liquidity. I told us you should expect to see that price is actually going to rate through this liquidity pool to the upside, and then we could frame the bearish move to the downside. But then I'm still anticipating to see further push of price to the upside. You can see the daily order block is actually an order flow in the 4-hour time frame, and you can see that the rejection zone we marked out in the weekly is in confluence to this breaker in the 4-hour time frame, because we have, this is the candle that sponsored the move that took out this liquidity pool resting here, and also this other liquidity pool. So I want to see price push further to the upside. We may have price reject at this fair value gap, and then we have the continuation to the upside, and then we see price falls to the downside. So this is what I'm looking forward to see in the following pairs that we actually analyze and we forecasted for the coming week. So till I see you guys next week, cheers guys, and have a profitable trading week.